I will just wrap up. He's at home and heading to California to head the graduate studies at Chapman. Yes, Pavel is a script editor, works internationally as well, mentors projects that liberate knowledge. He's the co-founder of Midpoint, and he's joining us in his first year as a group leader, has trained one-on-one projects before at the NFI. And on my left is a new addition, Marjorie Bendit, coming from Berlin. Marjorie evaluates projects for Creative Europe Media Development Fund, for another word, Cinema Fund, as well as ACE. And she'll be giving you some pitch guidelines. We'll be working with you one-on-one on projects. And let's see, on here we have Dimitris Yesusakis. Dimitri, wave.
Hello, hello.
He will be working with half of you, I believe, on script development. Dimitris is a director and screenwriter, works in Greece, and has also been with the NFI for many years. We also have Dimitris Evangelidis, who is not here, I believe, right now. Is he not? No. He will also be working with the other half of you in script development. And Dimitris has also been with the NFI for many years under many hats, has also been the editor of the publications that the NFI has put out during the years. And before we move to a couple of logistics, to also give a shout out to George Kalogeropoulos. Some of you have met him. George is the heart of the NFI. Thank you for keeping us back. A couple of things before we start the pitching session. This is a family. You're entering a family of filmmakers and writer-directors. Our goal is to get films made. We are all here having the same purpose. And part of what allows us to make films is to really look at the core elements of each script and get them to shape into a piece of work that not only communicates your ideas but also communicates what you want the audience to receive from the experience of watching the film. So in order to achieve that, our goal here is to facilitate your process and also to challenge you, because we are your line of first defense. If we don't understand something, people won't understand it. Meaning that we are actually here with all the good intentions to assist and to understand, and audiences are not always that way. So over the next pretty much 6 months, we'll be going through 4 stages of the process together. 2 of them in person, as you know, 2 of them online. This is the first one, the 10, 12 days in person is quite important because this is really where the new roots of the stories will be formed and where the bad habits hopefully will be put aside and a new way of communicating your story will be found so that we all get on the same page with what you want people to experience. So a couple of ground rules according to that. Respect and merciless investigation, which means that we're all here to work. And in as much as each one of the group leaders will run their groups, have ideas, facilitate, investigate, you will also be learning from each other. So as good citizens, according to that, please let's make sure that everybody walks in the groups tomorrow having read the scripts. And it sounds like, yes, of course, but sometimes it doesn't happen, and it sort of hinders the beginning of the work. So let's make sure everybody has read. And I think it's time to get to know each other a little bit more and get to know the stories a little bit more in terms of the approach for the pitch. Let's remember that you're here to communicate a story. Marjorie will give you some guidelines. We have to stay on time because we have to wrap today. We have to finish by the end of the day. Angeliki will wrap us up. And she will tell you more about Crossroads Co-Production Forum. She is the coordinator of that organization. we will wrap it up at the end of the day with her. But remember that you are giving us the essence of your story. You're getting us acquainted to what matters to you. And we really look forward to hearing it. The way that the panel will work is Margie will give you some guidelines. We'll start moving through the projects. You get 5 minutes, right? Yeah. And then we'll have a quick discussion on major elements or questions that show up off of your presentation. So this is not a judgment or commenting on the project as a whole. It's commenting on what we hear in the room today to give you a sense of how that translates to us.
Thanks, Christine. So basically, you don't have to be nervous. It's just us, and you all got my email, so I hope you really prepared something for today. Just to go through the guidelines again, remember to introduce yourselves with your name, country you come from, really brief background on who you are, where you've been, what you've done. Then you can give us you can tell us a synopsis of the plot. And as Christina said, you have to try to get the story through. Not explaining what it's about, but the story itself. So that everybody on the panel has an idea. Some people have read your story, but not everybody. And not also for your peers and experts. And it's also good to close the pitch talking a bit about your motivation as a writer, as well as your goals at the end of time. What are the elements you think you would like to work at or on during your stay? Here, you don't have to be nervous about your English, because most of us here, it's not our native language, so just like, if you are missing a word, don't worry about it, and try to communicate as best as you can the core of your project that you have brought with you. I'm sorry that I lost my voice there, the last couple of bits. So we don't really have an order here, so I was actually talking to a few of you beforehand. I would like to know if maybe there are volunteers. You have 5 minutes for the pitch, and there will be about like 5 to 8 minutes with the experts for feedback. We're going to try to do it like fluently. This is your stage right here. I'll be keeping time, and the clock is also right here, so you can look at it, and I'll give you a sign if when there's 1 minute left. So try to keep it in the frame of the 5 minutes. If you go over, it's not so terrible, but let's try to keep it fair. So, volunteers. Who would like to go first? Anybody? Anybody? Nobody goes first, but people know you know who I'm going to call first. So.
We want to reserve the third position.
You want to? Okay. What's your project name?
It's -1.
-1, okay. So I can reserve the third position.
Really?
So maybe you want to go first? It's always easier. It's always easier.
Well, I just regretted it. I didn't want to take back. Let's start. Anyway. Okay. So hi, my name is Asmina Prajou. I'm a Greek director, producer, and screenwriter. So far, I've created 2 short films as part of my filmmaking studies, and this will be my debut feature film. So the dialogue is Behind the Haystacks, and it's a social family drama with elements of crime. The story takes place in contemporary Greece, in a small Greek village, the border between Greece and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. You know, there's a lake there. It's called Dorian Lake. The one part of the lake, the 1/3 of the lake belongs to Greece, and the 2/3 of the lake to Fyrom. And in the story, hundreds of migrants gather in this area every day, wishing to cross illegally the border from Greece to Fyrom, with their goal being to reach Northern or Western Europe. So the story is about three different people, the father, the mother, and the daughter, who are forced in different paths to submit in the corrupt system of the society they live in. So there are three stories, but they're not told in tandem. It's a consecutive structure. So there's a fractured structure with one story following the other, something like different perspectives of the same main chain of events. So the first story is the story of the father, who is a middle-aged fisherman and farmer. He's afraid that he will go to jail for tax fraud he had committed a long time ago. And in order to find the money to pay back his debt, he starts working for the mafia, smuggling migrants across the border through the lake. The situation quickly goes out of control as two migrants are drowned in an accident at the lake, so he decides to quit despite the pressure and blackmail by the mafia. The second story is the story of his wife, who's a middle-aged woman. She's in charge of the woman association in the area, and she's very religious and loyal to the local priest. So when the women at the association try to organize soup kitchens at the refugee camp, despite the priest's disapproval, she tries to prevent them. But when she sees what is actually happening at the refugee camp, she starts supporting them behind the priest's back, risking to lose the priest's favoritism. The last story is the story of the daughter, who is 18 years old. She has a secret affair with a guy who's 30 years old, and he's the godchild of her father, of the fisherman. And she's dreaming of becoming a pop singer. So when she starts to occasionally sing at a nightclub in the city behind her father's back, her father, the fisherman, finds this out. He prohibits her from singing again, and so she decides to leave her parents' house in order to pursue her dream. But she soon realizes that she cannot bear the risks and responsibilities of her independence. So she soon comes back to her home, fully aware that she has to comply with her father's rules. So, towards the end of each of these three stories, the rumors about the deaths of the migrants and the accident on the lake start to spread. And at the same time, this guy, the 30-year-old guy who has a secret affair with the girl, this guy who was threatening to expose the mafia's activities is found dead. So the fisherman is arrested for his murder. And so all three characters, the father, the mother, and the daughter, have to make the same moral dilemma. Will they defend the truth in favor of the common good, or will they cover it up, also knowing that in this case an innocent man will go to jail? No time? 1 minute. Okay. So at this point, I'm currently developing the third draft of the script, and I believe that I have developed the main plot and the main character arc of the main characters in such a way so as to reveal efficiently, let's say, the theme. But I know that some characters are somewhat cliché and stereotype, and also I need to better connect the different events to the main trunk of the story, so the script becomes more concise and more coherent. So the last thing, I have to develop a lot of things, of course, but one other thing I need to focus on, and I need a lot of help, is that I said before that we have three different stories and three different, let's say, chapters. So what I want to do is, I need the audience to have a different impression, not only about the events in each different chapter, but also about the characters' motives. So I need the audience to have a revelation about the motives of each of the main characters. Let's say, for example, the mother is a different, let's say, mother in the second story, and we understand more things about her in the third story. So I need to develop that. It's not easy, you have to, yes, and that's it. So thank you very much. avoid that.
Do I need a mic or?
You never hear.
Hi. Yeah, am I there? Well, I just was wondering, I mean, there could have been a way to just tell the same story, handling all three characters at the same time. So what was the reason you broke it down into three chains of the same thing? Basically rewinding. You tell father's story, then you rewind, then you tell the mom's story, then you rewind, then you tell the girl's story. So basically what you're trying to do is you're dealing with subjectivity of truth.
Yes. Exactly.
And why would I bother for, as your potential audience, for the subjectivity of truth on the matters that are so different from each character's point of view? Because the agenda of each of your characters is quite different. So like if you have a Rashomon where I'm like told the same story over and over, there is certain gradation from, I mean, like the last person telling the same story to that person. So then we are like thinking, okay, this is going to be the ultimate truth, because the dead person has no reason to like embellish or lie or whatever, but they do. So that's the impact of Rashomon. But why would your story happening on the border with dealing with contemporary issues of the immigration and the family? Why would I bother for the subjectivity of truth as the kind of underlying idea? I just wonder.
Okay. Because, of course, the background of the whole thing is the immigration problem, but it's in the background. Not exactly in the background, but it's not related to the theme. The theme is about corruption, about covering up. So since the thing is this, first of all, I think this is related to the thing, because sometimes, we see corruption, for example, in Greece, and we say, why all these people are so scared? But actually, if you dig into this, you see it's not only fear, there are other things. Like for the first story, it's about, of course, submission, but it's submission and, what's the word again? Complicity. So this guy is guilty, but he hasn't done a crime, but he's a bit corrupt, and the one leads to the other. So in the first chapter, that's the chapter, I explore complicity and submission. In the second one, there's another thing, a different version of the thing. So in the second one, it's about social status. So I don't want the one person, the one character to understand the other's motives, first of all. And the other one is about the audience to dig with, in the course of the story, behind what is in the surface. So I think that this structure, maybe it's not obvious at this moment because it's in my mind what I want to do, so you cannot tell that it works probably, but I believe that if I work on this, I can succeed in, making developing the story in such a way which is an exploration also for the audience. And the second reason is that I want to explore, which is, it's the second reason, of course, I want to show a family where the one character doesn't know the other, and I think it's interesting, at least for me.
Okay, that's the best I've heard. That's the best I've heard.
Okay.
That actually they're learning about each other while each of them kind of tells their story. I kind of like that it's told 3 times. I don't know why, so I was just hoping to learn from you why. One last thing, I had a feeling that I learned more about everything from the first story and the least from the third one. Would you consider switching them around? To start out with the girl's story, the mom's story being the second one, and then the third one being the father's story? Because I felt like the father's story tells me the most, and then when you throw the most of it in the first one, then I'm getting kind of less and less of the overall thing as the stories go, why wouldn't it be the other way around?
Yeah, I have to think about it because sometimes it cannot work this way, and maybe
It cannot work.
I don't know. I have to think about it. I cannot answer.
Right?
Oh. Yeah.
We'll be talking about this for a while, just for the sake of time.
Okay.
I have nothing to say. I would ask the same question, why 3 consecutive stories instead of 1? And I know very little, just what I heard about the project, but why would you lose the theme in each one of the stories if you were telling all 3 stories in parallel as they evolve? But you know better.
It's the same here. I don't know what the intention of the author is. I understand that you are gradually giving some answers, but I don't know what the question is.
Can't hear. Can you speak louder? We can hear you. We can't hear.
I just said that I'm getting answers to something, but I don't know what the question is. Okay, the story is told in such a complicated way that I'm missing the point.
I have.
Okay, just take it in, we don't have to listen, otherwise you will spend the whole week here with everybody. So
Why don't you just say, because this is really a crucial question, she said.
I gotta give it a very short answer. Something I missed in my pitch, of course, because I know it's complicated. The prologue of the film, what we see, there are some children playing in the lake. So they discover, at the same time it's summer, it's what's the word? Flash forward. It's in the summer, 6 months after all the events. So it's in the summer, some children are playing at the lake, and at the same time, there's the grown-ups, the residents are dancing, and there's a festival. So they found 2 corpses, or 1, or whatever. And they go to the others who are dancing and singing and having fun and drinking and everything, to tell them that they found 2 corpses.
Excuse me, this is now, I'm afraid Christina was right. This is becoming epic. Can I repeat the question you heard? You offer many answers. What is your main question?
I'm about to.
Thank you.
Why? I have to continue for a little. They don't care about the. I have to say that the corpses. They don't care about the corpses. And the question raised there is why all these residents do not care at all about what these children have found. Sorry, I have to say that. That's fine. So we have the first story, and we have the first why, the second story, the second, and the third one, which is the third reason. So it has. I wanted to make a thematic structure. That was the reason.
Shall we say that, to conclude, hopefully, that your main question is why are people oblivious to the victims of illegal immigration? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, so just to quickly touch on the same point once again, it seems like one of the main issues that you guys will be working with is the shape that this story takes and the layers that you add with each one of the characters. And from what you've said, you do touch on a lot of big hot topics. You know, there's immigration and the illegal immigration and suffering of the people crossing the border, which is a big, huge topic. You have father against daughter, you have daughter individuality, you have mother and religion. You have a lot of big, big topics. And at some point, there needs to be a scaling of what is most important and what is less important in the story. And some of what's happening right now is that in the way that we're telling it in a and then kind of way, it gives us all the same kind of weight for these big issues. So as you figure out an element, if you stick with a separate point of views, there has to be an elegant transitioning that allows us to stay with the people as we discover new layers of them. And it seems like that will be a lot of work.
Yeah, I'll just say the same in a different way. I mean, I agree the form, you have to be careful always that the form is not a creative way to escape from the simple message that you want to convey. So, is that form the best way to say what this is about? Or is it a way to avoid getting to the heart of it? So, the form for me could be dangerous if it's not really giving us something new. And I agree also with Christina that the hot topic also can be a distraction. Because if it's a story about a family, a father, a wife, and a daughter, does it even need to be with the migrant issue? Would be a question that I would ask. How important is that to this drama between these three people, and about how they come to know each other, or how they come to trust each other, or whatever it's really about. So my advice is don't be distracted by things which are really exterior to your story, which are structure and hot topics. Maybe they're really important to it, but they shouldn't substitute what Jan was asking about. He was asking basically, what's it about? What's that core issue?
So, more volunteers. I have to start calling it. So, anybody?
It's not easy after computers, but I will try. I need my papers, I'm sorry. Okay, my name is Paolo Taddei, I come from Italy. I have mainly have a background as a technician. I was a cameraman, photographer, and director of photography. And I did some shots, documentary. Then I started to write a few years ago, let's say five, six. And I've been looking for my first debut feature film that so far hasn't come yet. So even if it's not my first script, Cavallo del Re, the one I'm introducing you, it should be my first feature film. Okay, Cavallo del Re, it's a noir, and it takes place in Pisa, the town where I live, and it's a small provincial town with 100,000 people living there. Cavallo del Re is the story of John. I'm using foreign names because I've been writing, even thinking about the foreign market, but so far it's easy for me. It's the story of John, an ex-jockey who had to stop his career for an accident and for gambling addiction. John, so far, is dreaming to go back riding, but he earns his living by killing horses. He kills horses because owners and trainers need their passport to enter into competition with younger and stronger horses to have better odds. That's no cheat in horse racing. It's quite popular in Italy. One day, John, among the horses he's ordered to kill, he finds his beloved Sherman, who was his champion, the horse with whom he had won so many races in the past. So, from that point on, John tried to save his own horse, his beloved horse. And finally, he will end on saving him, and the horse will be galloping free away, but the price to be paid for him to reach it will be very high. Most a defined one, the definitive one. So this is the main plot of this story. What my motivation on writing it was that I've been a rider. I wasn't doing races, but I was jumping, but I was an owner, and I know that when you are a owner of an animal, a horse in this case, it starts a particular emotional relationship between a man and the horse, and then, I mean, something I'm not I wouldn't say that I am an animalist, but I understand how can you be affected by controversial relationship with an animal. So this was my emotional motivation, but then I forced myself to put it into a genre movie because I wanted to experience the writing, the technique of writing a genre movie. What do I expect from MFI workshop? Well, feedbacks, not so, I mean, direct. Hopefully it's not my tutor, I'm sorry about that. But, yeah, I mean, but you went direct to the point, that's the way it is, but unfortunately my story is simple, so, but anyway, I expect feedbacks and I mean, to networking, to meet people and to reach a final draft, or at least more or less a final one, to send around producer, hoping that they will read it, because the main point is that people doesn't read the script. That's okay. And one last thing about the target. This is a big issue because if I put myself outside the cinema in Italy and I look at the people coming out, I only see old women, or old, let's say 60 women, men that are retired, they have money, they have time, so it's not easy to write thinking about the only target that go to the movies, because that's the way it is in Italy, except if you are writing for kids or something like that. But I think that the target of my movie will be middle-aged men, middle-aged women who want to face how a man can try to redeem his own life failing. And it's destiny who maybe many of us have to experience. So that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so maybe we'll start in a nicer tone. If that's so it's Pavel. So I'm Pavel. I'm group E. We're not together. So it is a beautiful idea. It could be a children's movie. Why not? A man trying to a children's movie. You said only children go to movies. A man trying to save a horse. Why not? You know. So what's kind of original about it is, you know, it's a standard story about someone involved in the criminal world who has to follow his conscience and save somebody. And in this case, it's about a horse. It's maybe in a typical noir movie, it'd be the mistress of the gangster or something like that would be the object of being saved for the guy. But you're doing it with the horse. So I would have two basic comments. One, make sure that the premise is pragmatic and believable. Because I just don't know enough about this world, but I thought it's veterinarians who kill horses, and it's not a difficult job. It's not such a difficult thing to kill a horse.
It's illegal.
It's illegal. It is, okay, I didn't know that. So it's an illegal job. Okay, so make that clear to people that don't know how that works. The second part I would say is something from Hitchcock, who said it's better to start with the cliche than to end with the cliche. It's better to begin with a cliche than to end with a cliche, because the idea is well, no, it's not a cliche. The beginning is, but Hitchcock says it's better to start with a cliche, and because what's the danger is when you have a very kind of original and nice idea like you. It's a man, an ex-jockey who's got stuck in a position of killing horses. Now he wants to save his beloved horse. I'm not sure where that story will go except for into a cliche after that, because you gave your original things at the very beginning. So, you know, what's actually going to be happening? What's going to be going on after, except for that they're being chased by the mafia? And it's harder to hide with the horse than with the human. And it's harder to make a relationship develop with a horse than with a human being. No, not a pitching technique. I'm just wondering about what you're going to do with the screenplay in the future. Like, the idea is kind of, I think a lot of people say, oh, that's nice, a man wants to save a horse. He's an ex-jockey, he needs to redeem himself, he's killing horses instead of taking care of them, and now he wants to do something right. But what's going to go on for the next 80 minutes? That's what that's what's going to be. Yes, that's my question.
What I was trying to test in this speech was if telling the emotional arc of the character, the main dilemma, it was worthwhile, instead of telling you all the markers that happen in the story, or the antagonist, because there is one, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be. So I was testing my pitch. Because sometimes when you do a pitch, you lose it, telling the structure, the story, but the main question is the main dilemma of the main character. That's the core of my idea. That's what I was trying to test. But, I mean, that's what he's doing, he's killing horses. And he's doing it in a more, let's say, hooking way, because he's putting them, throwing them in a big hole of building yards, and he covered the hole with cement. It's a typical way mafia in Italy kill people. I don't know if you've read about it. So it's a very strong, but that was my attempt.
Yeah, I also respond to this story. I think there's a lot of, there's something in it that feels very exciting and fresh. I will, following up on what I feel Pavel was saying, maybe I'll tell it in a different way. There's an interesting premise, and we know from what you've told us in this brief presentation that there is a personal connection to the story, meaning that you have yourself been involved in this world. Maybe not in the mafia world, we don't need to know, but with horses. So there is a truth to this that comes through it. Now, the way that the story will evolve in terms of what happens in it, what you've also told us is that you are doing a genre piece. So you are doing a genre piece about emotions that are very personal to you. And a word of caution, we don't know yet. You know, it's early enough, and that's what you're here to discover and to work with. But a word of caution is that you might be relying on the genre because of what Pavel is saying, because there's a very strong premise start, but the what would happen is not covered by the genre. You know, there's some bad guys, you know, going after them, etc., etc. And it's not an issue unless it's not dealt with, you know. But there is something about how to evolve the emotional truth of the story and scale it up, because it's starting high, and not just fall into the crutches of the genre to keep you going with the story. And then a quick couple of other points. For my personal approach to the work, I would say make it as close to your truth as possible, meaning John, why John? I mean, it's, you know,
I already matured this, but
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it doesn't matter. But just someone noticed. That's all there is to say. And then, in terms of making it believable, it also feels to me that a lot of work has to be done in terms of understanding how this man could be killing horses to start with, as even emotionally have the capacity to do it if he has lived and worked with horses so long. And I can understand potentially that it's also seems to be a piece about aging and failing and losing your.
It's better even of gambling addiction.
Sure. But you have to allow us to feel, to stay with him while he does it. You know, I mean, there are many different ways of doing it. One could say, well, this is someone who says to himself, I know about these animals, these animals know me, I will kill them in a way that will be less painful to them than others. You know, so it's almost, he covers for himself. He has some sort of rationale about why he's the one, right? So just stay connected to the emotional truth of it, and we'll see what happens in 6 months.
There was enough about killing horses here. I think that it would work as well if he hired a horse butcher. You know, so it's not crucial that he's killing the horses. What is crucial is that he's completely corrupted, that somebody who loved horses now is involved in killing them. So the technical killing by his own hand is irrelevant. So I would advise you very strongly, think about the human story. Forget about the horse that much.
Okay.
It is about somebody who redeems himself, who is corrupted and who redeems himself. And the horse is there just to remind him of his lost dreams. So that's all what you need. The real drama is inside a man. And the horse is just a way how he remembers who he was and how he goes back. So imagine that it's something else than the horse and you concentrate more on the human story.
Yeah, I agree.
Paolo, we will be working together, so
Yeah.
we will be working together those 12 days, so I will say less. You said something about the noir, and somebody commented that in a noir, usually the character saves the mafia's boss, girlfriend. And then we get to see this impossible love story evolving. So this is what we are watching. But here in your story, there's no such thing. You just say, he loved this horse. And we have to take your word for it. And there's no other human relationship in this story. There are too many characters following, and most of them dying. So I was wondering, and you said you were an owner of a horse. I would love to know about this relationship. I would love to know how it works, how this world works. But you also said something that made me worry a little bit. Did you say something that you're close to the final draft?
No, I said
Okay.
I want to reach.
Fine.
I'm waiting for the final draft to reach.
Okay.
No words. No, you misunderstood.
Well, first of all, what was wrong with feedback to Asimina?
It was very, very, very close to the. It was perfect.
Well, that's not how you sounded when you came up here. I thought it was very productive feedback, and I thought Asimina handled it pretty well. Huh? Yeah? Huh? About your story, you say your premise is that an aging jockey wants to somehow save the life of his horse.
Sorry, I don't understand. Sorry.
You said that the premise of your story is that an aging jockey
Yeah.
wants to save the life of his horse.
Yeah.
And in the end, the horse is still alive, so it pays off. In the course of saving the life of a horse, 4 or 5 people die.
Yeah.
So I would consider it a pretty costly endeavor to help the horse survive at the cost of 4 or 5 lives. So how do you?
That's a moral issue. I mean, it's a big issue. I know that's.
I'm not saying that 5 human lives are that much more important than a life of 1 horse, but it's an issue.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, that's exactly what I was mentioning before when I said it's a controversial relationship. There are many people who deal with horses that put apart humans of their own life, but it's not my intention. I think that human beings die in my story simply because they're bad people. That's all. Okay. But that's exactly what I want to dive into. And I am very happy that I succeed on communicating you the main core of the story. So it means that my 2 weeks workshop will work for profit, because that's exactly the main point. I don't know if.
May I be honest with you?
Sorry?
May I be honest with you? May I be honest with you?
Yeah.
You did not succeed.
You did?
You did not succeed with me I think you need to prove that those 5 people are bad enough that they are not worth the life of one horse. So I wish you, and that's an excellent point, but make them bad. I mean, I remember having radio treatment, at least one of them was actually kind of pretty cool guy, the old guy. My only comment would be, I'm not sure if the genre approach to your obviously quite a personal story is the right way to go. I mean, if you want to make the so-called European movie, whatever that means, but I think we all kind of feel what that means as opposed to some Hollywood movie. Genre is seemingly your friend, but it's actually ultimately your enemy. A genre concept is an enemy to a personal story. That's my opinion. Good luck.
No, you're right. Thank you.
So do you want to still keep the third position, Marcus? Yes? Okay. True to his word. The project is -1.
Well, good morning. Let me introduce you myself. I am Manos Papadakis. I am a Greek producer and script writer. So far, I have produced and written short films. This will be my first feature that I will be co-writing with Natasha, and I will be co-producing it with Fenia Kosovitsa, who's not here with us.
Hello from me too. I'm Natasha Xidi. We are both from Greece. I'm a writer and director, and so far I have directed documentaries and short films. And this project will be my first feature. So our project is called -1, and it is a multi-character absurd comedy that takes place in contemporary Athens during summer. Due to massive unemployment, all the inhabitants of an apartment building rent their flats to tourists and live underground on the garage basement. This is a secret. This started last year, but instead of a temporary thing, the place below the ground became more and more a permanent place to live. This is a secret well kept from the tourists who know nothing about it, as the inhabitants are afraid that this might destroy their reputation. Sorry, I'm going to change something. But one day their secret is revealed, that although they do everything in their power for their secret to remain within doors, their self-made camp ends up on TV news. Instead of this creating a problem for them to book their apartments, the basement becomes a popular touristic spot. The inhabitants, lured by the prospect of making enough money to make it through the low season, they turn the basement into a live museum where they become the exhibits themselves. -1 Live Museum becomes more popular, the inhabitants little by little become superstars, and they launch more and more bizarre activities. Until one day, more -1 live museums appear, and the competition threatens to destroy it all. Without hesitation, they make a last effort to stand out and make their business to thrive again. And they launch a new service called -1, the role-playing game, where they teach the tourists how to become themselves and how to take their position in their basement flats. Having their real flats booked by tourists and their basement flats booked by their impersonators, one by one they move to -2 basement, where they end up trapped in a role-playing game that seems to have no end.
That was the plot, more or less. What we have to tell you at this point is that we have already shot -1, but it was a short movie. It was the same theme, and while we were shooting it, we realized that this has a lot of potential. We had a lot of ideas about it, and we said that we want to explore it more and make a feature one. But of course, we'll have a different style and it will be a different plot, but it will be the same theme. We are going to have the same production company, the one of Nissyros, who is our co-producer, and the same crew. And right now we're in a very early stage of development. We have our first treatment, and we hope at the finish of this workshop that we will have a solid script. What else? What else?
Something personal, the whole idea started because we ourselves are renting out our flats in order to make a living. This is the idea that helped us start the short film. And while we're doing research, we realized that most of Athenians are doing the same. And we realized that people are not just doing that for an extra income, but actually they're doing it in order to survive.
We really feel very strong, and we're really keen on making this film and telling this story because we feel that it is a really strong parable about what is happening to our country. And to be totally honest, we think that what is happening to our country, little by little, is happening to the whole world. So that's it. Thank you.
I do think that there is a strong metaphoric value to your story in regard to the current Greek situation and the situation of turbo-capitalistic decay of human civilization. So I think it's kind of strong in that regard. My only question before we go into more details would be, do you want to do this? You mentioned comedy, like a genre. Do you want to do this style? Do you see this as a stylization per se, like in terms of acting style, in terms of even writing style, or do you see this as a realistic piece that might come off as funny here and there?
I think this is one of the things that we are still not completely sure. It definitely has a comedy element. Now, how strong that is and how dominant, I think we will discover it as we go, because we are very aware that this is a very tender line, that if we cross, it will become like a joke, and we don't want it to appear as something very easy. And in terms of genre, we were talking a lot about it, what is it, because of the pitch. And we decided that we're going to use this for now, mostly because of the absurdity and because what they do is really absurd. But it's not ultimately so funny, no.
It's not?
Ultimately so funny. There are funny elements, but it's not a funny story, for sure not. So
And one more little question, in your short film, you have this kind of couple, young couple, pretty much up front, and in a whole feature, plan for your feature, I don't recall any like strong, I mean there is this Mary, there is this and that, but I mean I don't recall any personal story so upfront as the short one has it. Do you plan to enhance some of those individual stories, or you strictly want to treat it as an ensemble piece, which is what your treatment suggests is an ensemble piece?
I think that, first of all, as we said, this is our first treatment, so we mostly have the idea of what's going on and the story as a whole. That's why the characters are not so developed yet, and sometimes we say they do this and they do this as if they're a whole. We want to have separate stories also that come out of it and give it flavor, and also to make the audience to feel more for them rather than them being an anonymous thing. But that's something we are going to work on here.
circumstances and all that because we were together on the short. But strangely enough, you are pitching your feature, and you're not talking about anybody. You're talking about this, community. So this is a danger, and an important choice you have to make. Either we will follow some persons or not. I had in mind, as I was listening to you, a Roy Anderson film for some reason. So I thought I would tell you, I should tell you, for what it's worth.
I'll be blunt. What you've written is still a short. You need to think big, much bigger. I think that real potential is if it goes on TV, the whole nation is involved, and you need to think what are the kind of rippers from that stone thrown into the water. You should stop thinking about the people in one building, because suddenly it goes wide, and it would, it can cause some kind of revolution. In Prague, if somebody opens a bistro, instantly 100 other people have the same idea. If somebody wants to be a hairdresser, instantly 100 other hairdressing salons open. So think about what would really happen if on TV somebody comes up with this good scheme. And you need to think about every character reacting differently. At the moment, it's still one group of people and they are doing the same thing again and again. It's still a short.
Can I ask you, do you mean that you were curious in what's happening in the outside world, or do you think, do you
Outside world, absolutely. Absolutely. It goes public, that's the whole thing. Well, that's the short.
I think it's really interesting what you're saying, the impact in the outside world, and maybe that brings collisions and more things. But I think we are talking about a whole different movie. I mean, for us, it's really important the point of view that it will be from this community. And through their point of view, we see what is happening also at the
I
outside
think
world.
that we are stuck with one joke.
To just touch on this from another angle, where the premise is fascinating and it could be funny and tragic and it's a great allegory and all that is great. And now the challenge, it's to go both deeper in terms of figuring out who is this really about, and because under these circumstances, different characters would respond in completely different ways, right? And then who you actually choose to have inhabit this experience says something about the experience itself and shapes the allegory in a different kind of way. So going deeper and understanding who are these characters, it's also interesting because it is personal, right? You guys are renting, but you're saying they, right? So they. Well, it has to be I am. Who is the I am in this story? And what Jan is saying is totally valid. However cocooned you want the point of view of the piece to be, these people are still affected by whatever happens. So how much of that we see, it is a stylistic choice, but we would feel it. So what do we feel? What really happens in the outside world? How does that cascade? And you're dealing with tourists. You're dealing with a dynamic between local and outside that also is going to change. How do the tourists respond? What happens within that? What are and he's right in think big. It doesn't mean make it cost more. It means think big and break out of what you've already done and explore what you cannot imagine yet, because the premise is wrong.
Yeah, I agree. You have a concept, but you didn't mention a single character. What I like about the concept, like if you think about Uber, which is a very smart idea, it's very, very efficient, but who does that help? It's exploiting the people that are working for it, and all the money's going to the top. And there's real people involved in that. There's real characters in Uber. There was a guy in Michigan who works for Uber, and he was so under pressure that he killed 6 or 7 people. He went on a shooting rampage. This is an Uber driver. And then you look at the top of Uber, the owner of Uber, I don't know his name, but the owner of Uber is a multi-billionaire. and he calls his company very cynically Boober, because he sleeps with so many women because he's so rich. He's just like, he's cynical about it. He just says, I own Boober. That's his own quote from the guy who owns Uber. So those are the people that are actually in this system. The one guy who's a family man who's driven into becoming a psycho killer because he's just driving from place to place trying to make a living off his own car without any social support, and one guy who all the money's going to, who's laughing, and just being completely cynical about it. And so even in the non-parody version of it, there are real people with real effects. And what you pitched was just a concept. It was a great concept for a short film, but it wasn't about people going through some experience, evolving somehow, getting some opinion through their experiences. And that's what you need for the feature film. It has to be about real people living through something, living through this experience, not just the creative idea, which you put a lot of energy into. That is like several levels. It's funny. Mine is, it's a theme of like. One of the themes I saw was like the authenticity of experience. The tourists, they want to live in a real Greek place, so they live in someone's house. But then they find out the real Greek place is -1, so they move down into -1 because that's the real experience. Then they find out that's not real anymore, so they make it into a role-playing game. It's like always this search for authenticity, which might be also one of the themes of the story. But who's it about? Who are the people? You didn't mention a single person.
Don't stick necessarily to your original idea of seeing this event through the POV of those people in this building, because Jan's idea is great. Imagine what would happen if in the opposite building there is a -1 community, and all of a sudden there is this competition about who gets the fucking tourists. And then you have this civil war.
Actually, it's one.
You have a civil war.
We have already thought about it.
In the country, which is actually what is happening at the moment. So you can really expand the potential of your circumstance just by giving it a thought.
Can I have a mic? I disagree. I do agree that the issue of the whole thing expanding has to be taken into account and affirmed. I totally agree with that. But I wouldn't move the movie much out of the basement, otherwise it gets out of control. Because then we would be basically covering from that basement, well, you will end up on Nissyros, where people don't have to go to -1, but to left 1. In Nissyros, if you were renting out your upstairs floors, do you have to dig into -1? You would end up in the sea. So you would just move on the beach. And then if we expand the -1 basement, whatever thing, from Athens to islands, then it's really getting out of control. I think you have to give it a serious thought how the thing expands, but the repercussions of that expansion, I think, should be addressed within the basement. That's my thought. Otherwise it totally spills over your glass, I think.
More volunteers? Yeah?
My name is Nissyros, and I'm a film director and an architect. And I had made a couple of short films, which I think they are good, and festivals is the same. And this is my first feature film. It calls Peter and the Wolf, which is, for me, it's a dark coming-of-age fairy tale. Yes, well, when dark maybe means that because this village and this world is between a thick mist, in no time, in no place. And my name is Thanasis, which means Thanatos, which means death. Death. It's a fairy tale because this world actually wants to become a fairy tale because they have found a fairy tale book and they blindly believe in the rules of fairy tales. That means they have read about the 3 little pigs, they have read about the 4 little dwarfs and stuff, and they believe that these magical numbers, for example, as a rule, they will certainly have great and happy endings if you stick to the rules. But the most important is the coming of age film because this is Peter's story. And Peter is a teenager growing up in this fairy tale world. And he actually needs to be loved and to belong to this world. When this world, in some level, doesn't want Peter inside. Because he's the 4th child. And that's why I really wanted to be the 4th in my age. Well, that is the whole general idea, but for me, as I said, the story is the most important thing because I believe I am a visual storyteller, I believe that I am, and I really believe in hero-centered narrations. So Peter will be growing up in this world, and will struggle against these rules, and he will come of age as I did when I had my coming of age, and I struggled to belong and to be loved in my family, in the society, in an era that I was in the 90s, growing up, when I think fairy tales were at most like Disney tales. I really grew up with Disney tales, which they produced a bubble that I think that's now not true. Well, that's sort of for me because yeah, that's me.
Hi. So we will be working together. So we'll have hi. We'll be talking with our group about the elements of the story. You didn't give us too much. One of the things that I will say to start thinking about is this is an allegory again. This is based on fairy tales, but it's choking with elements. You are trying things, and there are some things that work very nicely, and there are some things that are there to fill in the gaps. And there are many ideas and many different ways of dealing with fairy tales and dealing with coming of age. So some of the work that I predict we will be doing is a lot of cleanup, to try to understand what is really the main understanding of this fairy tale world and how has it come to be this way. This idea of numbers and rules is very interesting, and it seems like it holds the thrust of the story as you have it, but then it gets choked by all this other stuff. And in terms of the main character, you talk about heroes. This is a teenage boy, belonging, not belonging. Something to get you started thinking about is he's also the most passive of the characters in an interesting way. Peter, yeah. So and he has a friend which you guys don't necessarily know about, but I do because I read his work. He has a friend who takes over a lot of the doing for him. And who almost takes on a love relationship story with him because there's no one else that offers love. So really thinking about what is the essence of this coming of age story, and where is the love? And we don't necessarily mean relationship love, but love as in a relational love. Where is the worth living for this story is a place to start thinking about, because right now we're kind of skidding around, and it's a fascinating world, but it doesn't quite have a clear line in terms of character or in terms of thematics. But there's a lot to work here with, so it will be fun to do that. Okay.
You know, it's not easy for writers to pitch, so congratulations everyone so far. And for your pitch, I didn't quite get enough information, so I'm only guessing about a lot of things. But you're in the development stage, so the guessing might be worthwhile. So if I understand correctly, you're creating a world where the ideology of the world is that we live by fairy tales. Yeah? And there's a boy in that world, a teenage boy who can't fit into the prevailing ideology. And so that's supposed to be a metaphor for not being able to fit into the world that you're from. Like if you're from a conservative environment and you're born homosexual and you just can't find your place inside that world, that's kind of like the experience that this boy's having. And so the goal of the story is to find your own story that works within this world of stories. Yeah. So it's kind of it's a little bit tricky. It can be it has two levels to it. One is a very genuine story of a boy that kind of has to find his place and find reconcile with his community and find a way to be accepted and find a way to accept the community around him in a way that makes sense so that positive values kind of survive. And on the other level, it's a kind of game with the audience, like because we know this world is kind of a game. Because it's expecting us to know about fairy tales and expecting that to be part of the fun and playing with our knowledge of the fairy tales and then using. So you have to make sure that we know what we know when you're doing this, and then that we're going off from what we expected, because that's part of the game of the story like that. We know that the Peter and the Wolf story is like this. We know the Goldilocks is like this, and so on. And then we're going to break expectations in a very fun way, and in a way that's going to give a new twist to everything, but at the same time allow for the character to evolve and develop. Right? Those are kind of tricky goals to have. So yeah, you have to kind of sit aside and think about things. Think about how this character is going to evolve, what his path is, and then think about what is the game we're playing with the audience so that they are never lost. Because in a game like this, they can't be lost. They have to be thinking with you and having fun and coming up with, oh, I get it. They have to feel smart while watching something like this. And you kind of, as a creator of this, have to let the people get the idea themselves, but at the right time, like, yes, I get it, yes, that kind of experience that you want to do. So 2 levels of work, as I see it. Process of the boy developing, coming of age, finding a way to accept and be accepted, and creating the game of the world, of the story, so that we're always involved, we always feel part of it, and we feel really satisfied that the character makes it at the end. So it's a fairy tale, so it is a happy ending, right? For him. It might be a dark world, but it's a happy ending. Yeah, it's a coming of age. So coming of age usually has a happy ending. We find ourselves at the end.
I would just point out that coming of age is not part of your story to start with. It's about something else. So you are confusing yourself by kind of justifying, oh, this is coming of age, but also a fairy tale. Make it simple. It's a kind of disguised way of talking about coming out of closet, not of age.
I'm sorry, but there's another treatment which is a little bit or completely different from the one that you have read, maybe. So it has been more coming of age and less coming out of the closet.
Okay, doesn't matter. To start with, all these justification of this is this genre, or this is a fairy tale, it's just bullshitting. You should tell a story. And this is about the world, which is very particular. There is a guy who wants to fit in, but he's attracted to some other guy who doesn't.
I can't hear you.
And you need to set up that world with the animosity towards the friend who does not want to fit in. This is very
nothing about it if it has changed. Are you still writing with Panagiotis?
What?
Are you still writing it with Panagiotis?
He has become a co-writer, and he will start writing.
So
the
you're still working
script.
together?
We are still together.
But it's different than the one we talked about last summer.
Oh, from last summer, a little different. Yeah.
You should hear the ones that you have read.
Well, it's hard for me to relate to this speech because you were basically talking about ideas and not about the themes. So I learned very little about who the character is and what the issues are. And I think you should follow. Don't you agree that actually this was not according to your main rule that, you know, so maybe talk to Marjorie and see how to convey it in a more clear way? Because when you almost strictly talk about the idea and what you want to convey, it sounds like a movie we have seen. So you want to make it more particular by affirming what really matters to you and who matters to you.
Thank you.
Didn't even have to say anything. And then it would be good to have someone from group B or E, if anybody wants to volunteer.
Hello everybody, my name is Heike. I'm a co-writer with
Ruth, hi. Hi, my name is Ruth. We are from Germany. I'm the co-writer and director of the film. I work as a director for documentaries. This is my second feature film. Otherwise, I also work as a writer for other directors, so you can hire me if you want.
We are making a film. It's a we hope you're doing a film which is Raspberry with Mustard. It's a children's story. Our protagonist is called Mary. She's 13 years old and she has several problems. First of all, there is a famous saying in Germany. This you should know. Love gives wings. Mary has several problems. One is her father is an undertaker. Wings. Her father is an undertaker and her mother is dead, and she died several years ago. She has a little brother, 6 years old, and he's really kind of stupid little boy. And she is falling in love with Rocco, 16 years old, and she thinks he's the right boy.
Right, so I answer the question. Mary's got three problems. First, she's in love with Mr. Wrong. Mr. Wrong is Rocco. Second, she inherited the ability to fly, and she's not a supergirl, she just flies because she's in love. You know, hormones, they give you trouble, and one of her troubles is she's able to fly. Third one, her mother is dead, and she really doesn't want to have a new one, but her father is in love. And he's in love with the agent who actually wants to find a new wife for his father. At the end of the day, the new wife is the agent. Mary is trying to always save her brother because her brother doesn't have a special ability, so he gets one. He always gets in trouble with the older gang in the village, and he kind of kills himself sometimes. So here we are writing a script, we have written a script, Raspberry with Mustard, which basically is a children's movie, deals with two main subjects, which is love and death. Mary is in love, but also she's the daughter of an undertaker, her mother is dead. The script is quite far. We are here because we are trying a second round. We were given script funds
production preparation funds and production funds for about €1 million already. And then shit happened, as sometimes happens in life. And we had a scandal in Germany, and no film for children with original scripts was produced for many years. And we have found another production company, Tischler Mann. Susanne Mann is coming next week. The producer, she's a very nice person. On behalf of the production company, I'm going to be for them here and working in the production rounds, hopefully. And what I'm aiming at with this film is it's not typical for German children's movies, because I'm trying to combine humor and poetry. Coming from a Soviet Union Russian background, I really always admired, loved the poetry in the Eastern European films for children, and this is what really lacks in Germany. So this is the second start for us, and we are happy to get support. We have sent a text in which we describe what we think are the weaknesses of the script already. So whatever you're going to tell us, we might have written it down already. And otherwise, we're very, very happy to improve the script, because we really believe in the script and we want to make it.
And as Ruth said, one important thing to know for you is in Germany, original children's stories are not really made. It's always you have to have a novel and a successful novel. So we wanted to be clever, and first we wrote the novel, but unfortunately it's not so successful. But we wrote it.
So, ready.
I have only one question for you for now. Either I fly because I'm in love, or I fly because I inherited the ability to fly. But how could it be both? If I inherited the ability to fly, do I need to fall in love? Or if I fly, if I fall in love and therefore I fly, please don't have me inherit that.
Well, that is a chemical biological procedure in the body, as we put it. Because when you're in love, we know that different hormones are storing out, basically, and that are the hormones that make you fly. So yes, you need to be in love to be able to. On the other hand, Miroslav, you are a man, you are not able to fly because it's only the female lineage.
From mother to daughter, to son to.
I have flown. I have flied.
So we are your group.
Please think about this.
No, we have. I'm sorry, I'm making jokes. We have. It's in the test. In the text, we have. That was one of the critical points. Because the logic behind the flying is not logical. So.
Why then? But you are contradictory. Why then give it the logic through inheritance?
Great. Maybe that is the solution. That would be a solution.
We think about it.
We will think about it.
I don't know. Do we understand each other?
Yes.
What I'm telling you is get rid of inherited ability to fly, because it does harm to your character's ability to fly thanks to being in love. That's my main issue to start with.
That's true, but maybe I can put the question later on, because we were trying to link up the daughter with the mother. That's why, but maybe it's not necessary. That was the main reason why we thought it really needs a very a strong link towards the mother, and also it's a family secret. That's another aspect of the script, because nobody's allowed to say anything, but you know, a girl flying up in the sky, you really need to be hidden in the...
I mean, this is getting kind of all over the place, but if I can fly thanks to my link to my mom, and my mom has recently died, I won't be able to fly.
It's
Because
not recent,
I'm
but...
grieving for my mom. How do I fly? No love will redeem me, for the very link to my mom to fly thanks to some newly, is the ability to fly inherited, or is it generated by love? Period.
Love, of course. That's the only
But
thing.
then I guess we can mix the both. Can we? I don't know.
Thanks very much.
You were going to say something. I only wondered, why do you keep on referring to it as a children's film?
What?
Is it a film for children or children's film? To my experience, Greek films which are aimed for children usually are naive. And naive. Not nice. But I was fascinated by this story, especially with the flying. I've seen Miroslav fly before, so all over the island. Is it about funding that you call it a
No.
children's film?
Thank you for this question, because this is really about the structure of filmmaking in Germany. We are very orderly and organized, and so is the genres in filmmaking. This is purely for them, it's a children's movie. That's why I said I aim as a director to really bring out the poetry, the beauty, the big feelings for children, to make it a deep and funny thing. And that as a combination is difficult to get through in Germany. I would love to have it not labeled as a German movie.
That's fine with me. It's fine with your pitching, but I'm saying that you can as easily follow the story of an underaged hero in a film for adults, and this is, I would follow your story as an adult.
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
Miroslav started to hint at something which bothers me even more. You with great clarity named all the problems of that girl. Her mother died, she's in love with the wrong person, there's a new woman in her father's life. This is at least 3 stories which emotionally are cancelling each other. I think you have to decide what is it really about and stick to it. You put everything in, it's kind of good Eintopf.
Okay, right, thank you for this. I never thought it's too much, actually.
Sorry?
I never thought it's too much, but if you are aiming at...
Just think what one feels when the mother dies, and what one feels when she's in love, and what one feels if she's jealous of her father, the priest. Those are completely different emotions which are working against each other.
Just to second that, we've talked about this with a couple of the other projects. It's a question of hierarchy. You know, what is the film mainly about? Is it about overcoming grief? Is it about finding love? Is it about is it about rediscovering the relationship with the father? All 3 are valid, but one of them can guide the film, and the others have to take a lesser stage and allow the one through line to let this girl fly and get somewhere. Like, where does she get it by flying? Does she manage to find a new way of relating to her dead mother? Does she rediscover her father? Does she fly off to a land of different love? So the ideas can create more problems one for the other, and it can cloud what the film is supposed to actually elicit from us. And as Jan is saying, it's very different headspaces. A grieving 13-year-old will fall in love in a different way than a non-grieving 13-year-old. So is this really about falling in love? Or is it about finding an outlet to grief? Is this a film about loss, or is it about flying away? It could be all of these, but it has to be disciplined somehow.
It depends on the question. Is it heritage, or is it because of love?
And it's connected, of course, it is also connected.
But that's interesting, because we actually chose the title because of raspberry with mustard, symbol for love and sweetness, and mustard and bitterness. But let's think about it.
And do people eat raspberry with mustards in this film?
Yes, there's a raspberry mustard, very delicious in France, actually.
In France and in Germany?
No,
And in Germany.
Okay. I agree with Jan and Chris. I didn't know if it was just a metaphor, if it was something that your main does your main character like this and no one else likes it, or does she hate it and everyone
No,
else hates it?
there's somebody dies in the film, of course, it's a granny dies, and the granddaughter gives them the favorite food, which is raspberry and mustard, in the coffin. That's why it's a very small, tiny scene, but it's the favorite time.
But grandmother's favorite food is very often not the favorite food of the grandchildren.
But that's a present for her.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement. But your character has an opinion and a life, and and some kind of attitude towards it. I agree, with Jan and Christine about this competing stories, and I think you're battling with yourself on another level also, because when you talk about like wanting to be a poetic film, to me, poetic film means like an auteur film. Auteurs, because auteurs they create their own poetry, they create their own language, they don't respect genres necessarily, or if they do genres, they take it for their own, like Jim Jarmusch, he does a genre, but makes it his own thing. They don't necessarily respect story structures, and children movies are usually the most genre movies. They usually have the strongest rules of storytelling, and they have the strongest genres. And you're saying you want to make a children's movie, but also an auteur film. And so I just wonder, I think that's kind of a competition that you also have to resolve about what it is that you really want to make. Because
is it because, sorry, may I ask you something? Because for me, making a poetic movie I didn't understand it that way, that it is an auteur movie, but if you understand it this way, then I'm open, we are open for discussion. I just meant I wanted to have it out of the box of German children's making, that's what I meant.
Right. I would call that auteur film. If you're not following the convention, if you're following your own poetry, your own language, your own sentiment, then perhaps it's an auteur film. And auteur films about children are generally not children's films. Ivan's Childhood by Tarkovsky is not a film for children. It's a great film. It's a poetic film, but it's not a children's film. So I don't think your motivation to make a children's film has to be, I want to make a different type of film than what they make for children in Germany. It would be more like, I want to make the film that I want to make.
So thank you very much.
We're actually bigger. We have one more person in our group who is also attached to another project, Emine. So we'll be 3 people pitching today. We're coming from Istanbul, Turkey. Our project is The Disappeared. Ramin is the director and scriptwriter. This is going to be his 4th feature. He's actually at the moment in the pre-production of his 3rd feature. So this is a special time for him. Literally, yes. And okay, his last film was The Impeccables. It was in Busan and traveling in many festivals in 2013. Hakan is our scriptwriter. He's also actually a novelist who's focusing on psychological thrillers, which is a great addition, we think, for this project. He's the co-writer, but I call both scriptwriters. They've been working together since November 2014 on this project. And I'm one of the producers. My name is Aslı. And I have my own independent production company. I've been producing since 2010. Sorry, I'm not used to pitching in this kind of settings before. It's usually co-production market, and it's not by scriptwriters or directors usually, so this is a very good experience for me. So I will give the microphone to my director.
Hello. So the film that disappeared is set in kind of a Istanbul conservative neighborhood in Turkey. We don't say where. It could be a big city, it could be a small city, it could be a village. Essentially, the city the women are not allowed to leave their homes based on the conservative religious stigmas. But then the men start to disappear, and we don't know why. They disappear mysteriously, they don't know why, nobody knows why. And little by little they start getting very paranoid. So as they get paranoid, they start trying to find scapegoats, someone to accuse. This is their fault, this fault. So it starts always with the outside, of course, the immigrants, the powers that be, the authorities, the United States, and then it starts shrinking. It's like a reverse ripple effect. It starts shrinking to the neighborhood, to the guys that don't really fit in the neighborhood. Little by little, they start just being suspicious of each other. At which point they decide to lock themselves up in their homes. This first part, before they lock themselves up in their homes, we are following essentially 4 characters that kind of represent the neighborhood, that gives a general scope of the neighborhood, led by one character who's actually the main character, this guy called Ahmed, who's like the photocopy maker of the neighborhood. He makes all the copies for the lost people. In the second half, where they get very afraid and they lock themselves up in their house, we stay with Ahmed, we only stay with him. And he's trying to preserve the power dynamics he has with his wife, but obviously he cannot. It's not possible because he's not going out anymore, he's not making money, he's not bringing food in. So gradually he has to allow her to leave the house so that she can go and work in the store and bring money and bring food and go shopping and whatnot. And he stays at home and we stay with him. And from that point on, we are doing this deconstruction of this male psyche and to see what happens when you lock someone in their homes, whether they be female or male. And yeah, the tone of the film is kind of a very, very black comedy with some fantastical elements, obviously. Disappearance. We're the 4th draft right now, and yeah.
Maybe the comedy part is the reaction that people give to that mysterious event. There's a thriller element, but the reactions of men to that brings the comedy.
Yeah, in my group, so really talking about it much more. I'll be very short now. Even in your pitch and in your screenplay, the whole thing falls into 2 halves. You mentioned it yourself. Those are 2 different movies. You need to choose one or the other. So the first is about the neighborhood and about 4 characters. The second is about Ahmed, one person. So it really falls apart. So you need to make up your mind about which suits you better.
Yeah, so when you were pitching it, I really got surprised when you said our main character is Ahmed, it's a man. It seemed like a great opportunity to have it be the female main character, because it's about the men disappearing, it's about the women being locked up. And this seems like a setup which allows for someone to grow. And if it's about the women being locked up, then it seems to be that's a chance for someone to go through from some kind of transformation, taking charge of the mystery, finding it out, protecting the men, because the women also would feel less unsafe over time, because it's as a man you know you're a target. The women realize they're not a target, and so that's another reason why I could imagine it's a chance, it's an opportunity in a story like this for a female protagonist. And I was shocked that it wasn't, just from the way you were pitching it. If it is Ahmed's story, then again I would look for the opportunity for transformation. If you choose to start him earlier, then probably he's someone who's very responsible for locking people up. Maybe because of tradition, maybe because he doesn't understand that he's doing it. But as the community's put under pressure and being assaulted from the outside, and he has to protect himself, he could understand as he's locking himself up, and the consequences of locking himself up, what they've been doing to the woman in So I'm looking at it as a perspective of, which I think is usually the main way a story goes, of a character transforming, of the character going through that experience. So if it's Ahmed, I would say going from someone who believed in locking other people up to realizing there's another way, or a chance for someone who starts up as locked up becoming empowered through the story.
That is actually happening, obviously. There is a transformation to Ahmed at the end. It just comes very, very late for him. But the idea of staying with the men is this, because this is the real problem in the society, is the male mentality, which is dictated by the society, of course, but we are trying to explore this instead of showing the opposite of showing women being locked up and then being released. We are trying to understand the mechanics, the logic of these men. How do you think and why do you think like that?
And also I think it's very interesting for me when I read it, like the male anxiety about losing the power, losing the public space to women. And then that makes a different power dynamic, the gender dynamic reversal. I find it interesting, but thank you.
Yeah, I can see the appeal of staying with the men, but I also think that there is a lot of opportunity going out with the women, because it's a whole other world, and then it becomes a world of women. And there is something about this dynamic and this flipped reality that becomes fascinating. And you mentioned, you know, in the scapegoat, you know, a lineup, you know, how it sort of closes down to the neighborhood, the suspicion. I would imagine that initially it doesn't even occur to them that it's men who are targeted. So when they're sending the women out, it's almost like, you go out there, we're gonna just hide, and you can disappear tonight. So there's a huge sort of natural expected turn when it's realized that the women don't disappear, I assume, right? From what you've said, right? So that seems to completely change the dynamic of the universe. And I don't know if you're exploring that moment and what happens after that moment, but that seems huge to me, you know, when it actually becomes obvious that it's the men who are being targeted. And it's also interesting, the dynamics of a couple with this kind of world, which you hinted at, and I don't quite know, obviously, from your presentation, how that evolves. So I guess keep in mind the other side, keep in mind the going out, and that might also address Jan's comment about unifying the story, because if you completely lose the neighborhood and the society, you're kind of castrating the energy of it. It works because it's both. The dynamic is the inside and the outside. It's both of them in connection. It's fascinating.
I agree 100%. I would love to know what is happening outside when the women are out and Ahmed is locked. Are there other men locked up?
Yes, essentially all the men are locked. I mean, we kind of see what happens with the women based on his interaction with his wife as she comes back from work. And also he's constantly kind of surveying the neighborhood to see what's going on. So we always see what's going on with the outside, with the women, but we always see it mostly through his point of view.
It's a rather narrow point of view since he is locked up in the house, but are there other men still disappearing when they are locked up? Because this,
yes.
They are. And he's afraid that it's coming to him.
Yes, exactly.
Although he's locked up.
Yes, he learns because they have this, they're communicating through the apartment shafts, the men.
Yeah.
And then they start,
they
start to kind of gossip about what's going on outside. And then they learn that, yes, even though they're locked up, they learn that their story of men disappearing even though they're locked up in the safety, relative safety of their homes.
Don't they come together in order to see how it happens? Because when you're all alone and you disappear, nobody knows how it happened. But if we are all here and all of a sudden Miroslav flies and disappears, we are witnesses to the event, so we know.
They try, but they can't figure out how it works. In the first half, they do work. It starts going around in packs, and they see nothing happens, eventually they can't stay always together, and then somebody goes nuts.
What really makes those men disappear? Is that an assumption, or you have a concrete plot to make them disappear? What makes them disappear? Why are they disappearing?
Well, we never reveal this, there's no...
Okay, well, sounds cool too, for me. I think it's huge, potentially. Now it's up to you what you're gonna make out of it, but like, I mean, it's actually, I don't know, listening to you, I feel it's a movie that questions patriarchal concept of society. And I'm not sure if it's more, I don't know, if it's stronger to follow it through a decay of a man or through a kind of upspring, I mean, some kind of like whatever of the woman. I think either way, I mean, maybe it will be more pointing towards the guy who is no longer, you know, this hunter, archetypal hunter. As interesting could be to follow a woman who turns into a hunter. Either way, I think it's a huge responsibility you're taking on yourselves. Good luck. It's a movie I want to see.
Thank you.